Veltar Caney stood in the briefing room, his forearms folded behind his back as he listened to the Admiral speak. The tall, blue-skinned Altarian had always been proud of his work as a military analyst. His reports had helped the Galactic Coalition win many battles against smaller threats. But today felt different. "The situation is desperate," Admiral Zixna said, her voice heavy with worry. "The Dominion Empire has taken 12 star systems in the past 6 months. Our fleets cannot stop them. They fight like wild animals, showing no mercy to anyone who stands in their way." Veltar nodded slowly. He had read the reports. The Dominion forces were brutal and effective. They destroyed everything in their path, leaving nothing but ash and death behind them. The Coalition's civilized military tactics were no match for such savage warfare. "We need allies," the Admiral continued. "Strong allies who can match the Dominion's aggression. Our scouts have found a species that might help us. They call themselves humans, from a planet called Earth in a distant arm of the galaxy." The Admiral pressed a button and holographic images appeared in the air. Veltar saw a blue and green world, then images of the creatures who lived there. Humans looked strange to him. They had only 2 arms and 2 legs, pale skin in various shades, and hair on top of their heads. They seemed so small and weak compared to the mighty warriors of the Coalition. "These humans have been fighting wars for thousands of their years," Admiral Zixna explained. "Their planet has seen countless conflicts. Some of our military experts think they might be useful as mercenaries against the Dominion." Veltar raised one of his hands. "Admiral, with respect, they look very primitive. How could such small creatures help us against the Dominion's war machines?" "That is exactly what we need you to find out," the Admiral replied. "You will travel to their world and study their military capabilities. Watch how they fight, how they think about war, and whether they could be valuable allies. Your report will help us decide if we should recruit them." The assignment excited Veltar. He had studied many alien species before, but never one that was completely unknown to the galaxy. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks aboard a Coalition scout ship. During the trip, Veltar read everything the scouts had gathered about human society. What he learned confused him. Humans seemed to spend most of their time fighting each other. Their history was full of wars between different groups on their own planet. They had weapons that could destroy entire cities, yet they also created beautiful art and music. They could be incredibly cruel to their enemies, but also showed great kindness to strangers. How can one species be so contradictory? Veltar wondered as he studied their files. When the ship reached Earth's solar system, Veltar was surprised by what he saw. Human space stations orbited their moon and several other planets. Their technology was more advanced than the scouts had reported. Military ships patrolled the system with precision and order. A human vessel approached their ship. The communication system crackled to life and a calm female voice spoke. "Coalition vessel, this is Captain Li Jiwan of the Luna Defense Force. Please follow our escort to the station." Captain Li met Veltar at the docking bay. She was shorter than him, with dark hair tied back in a neat style. Her uniform was clean and well-fitted, and she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, studying Veltar with the same curiosity he felt about her. "Welcome to Luna Station," she said with a small smile. "We have prepared quarters for you and full access to our training facilities. We understand you want to learn about our military methods." Veltar was surprised by her directness. Most species tried to hide their military secrets from outsiders. "You are very open about this. Are you not concerned about revealing your tactics?" Captain Li's smile grew wider. "Our leaders believe that understanding leads to better cooperation. Besides, you will see nothing here that we do not show to all our allies. Please follow me." As they walked through the station, Veltar noticed how the human soldiers moved. They were alert but relaxed, showing respect to their officers without the fear he saw in other military forces. When they passed a group of soldiers eating together, he heard them laughing at some joke. "Your warriors seem very cheerful," Veltar observed. "Why should they not be?" Captain Li asked. "A good soldier needs a clear mind and strong spirit. Fear and sadness make people weak in battle." They reached the quarters prepared for Veltar. The room was simple but comfortable, with a large window showing the curve of Earth below. Captain Li handed him a datapad with his schedule. "Tomorrow you will meet Sergeant Park Minho. He will show you our basic training programs. After that, you can observe whatever interests you most. We have combat simulations, strategy classes, and live exercises." That night, Veltar stood at his window looking down at Earth. The planet looked peaceful from space, its blue oceans and white clouds hiding the violent history he had read about. How could such a beautiful world produce warriors fierce enough to help against the Dominion? The next morning, Sergeant Park Minho arrived at Veltar's quarters. The human was older than Captain Lee, with scars on his hands and a calm way of speaking that reminded Veltar of veteran soldiers from other species. "Ready to see how humans prepare for war?" Sergeant Park asked. Veltar followed him to the training areas. What he saw there would begin to change everything he thought he knew about warfare. Human soldiers moved through combat exercises with fluid grace, their weapons seeming to extend their bodies naturally. But what struck him most was how they helped each other. When one soldier fell during a difficult exercise, others immediately stopped to help him up. When someone made a mistake, their teammates corrected them without anger or punishment. They worked together like parts of one great machine, each person supporting the others. In human military doctrine, Sergeant Park explained as they watched, a soldier's first duty is to his comrades. We fight not because we love war, but because we love the people beside us and the people back home. Veltar made careful notes in his report pad. This was not what he had expected to find. These humans did not seem like savage warriors. They seemed like something else entirely, something that made him feel uneasy in a way he could not yet understand. As the day ended, Veltar realized his assignment would be more complicated than he had thought. These humans were not simple mercenaries or primitive fighters. They were something the galaxy had never seen before, and he was beginning to suspect that studying them might change more than just his report. It might change everything. Veltar spent his second week at Luna Station watching human training exercises. Every day brought new surprises that challenged what he thought he knew about military preparation. The humans trained hard, but they also seemed to enjoy themselves in ways that confused him. During a combat simulation, he watched a squad of soldiers work through a hostage rescue scenario. The exercise was deadly serious. Failure meant simulated civilian deaths and mission failure. Yet between rounds, the same soldiers joked with each other and shared stories about their families back on Earth. How can they switch so quickly between humor and deadly focus? Veltar asked Lieutenant Choi Junho, a young officer who had been assigned to answer his questions. Lieutenant Choi thought for a moment. We fight better when we remember what makes life worth living. Laughter reminds us why we protect people. If we stayed serious all the time, we would forget that our job is to preserve joy, not destroy it. This answer troubled Veltar. In his experience, warriors needed to be filled with anger or fear to fight effectively. They needed to hate their enemies or love battle itself. But these humans seemed to approach warfare as a job they did to protect something else they valued more. The third week brought Veltar to observe advanced tactical training. Colonel Kim Soha, the station commander, gave him access to classified exercises that showed human strategic thinking at its most sophisticated. What he saw there shook him to his core. The humans were running a simulation of urban warfare against an enemy that used civilian populations as shields. Veltar watched as the human commanders found solutions that saved both their soldiers and the innocent people caught in the battle. They used tactics he had never seen before, approaches that required incredible precision and coordination. Your methods are very complex, Veltar told Colonel Kim after the exercise. Most military forces choose between protecting civilians or achieving victory. You seem to demand both, Colonel Kim nodded. We learned long ago that winning battles means nothing if you lose your soul in the process. Our greatest victories come when we find ways to achieve our mission while staying true to our values. But surely there are times when you must choose, Veltar pressed. When saving civilians would mean losing the war, the colonel's expression grew serious. Those situations exist, yes, but we spend most of our training time learning how to avoid them. We believe that smart tactics and good preparation can create options where others see only impossible choices. That evening, Veltar met with Dr. Yoon Hana, a military historian who taught at the Luna Station Academy. She had offered to help him understand how human warfare had developed over their long history. You must understand, Dr. Yoon explained as they sat in her office surrounded by books and holographic displays, that humans have been fighting wars for over 10,000 years. But our approach to warfare has changed dramatically during that time. She activated a holographic timeline showing human military development. Veltar saw images of primitive humans with stone weapons. then metal swords, then guns, then weapons that could destroy entire planets. In our early history, we fought like most species do, Dr. Yoon continued, with emotion, with hatred, with the desire to completely destroy our enemies. But we learned that this approach created endless cycles of revenge and suffering. So you became more peaceful? Veltar asked. No, Dr. Yoon said, and her smile was sad. We became more effective. We learned to fight without hatred, to destroy our enemies without becoming monsters ourselves. We discovered that the most dangerous warrior is not the one filled with rage, but the one who remains calm and thinks clearly while others lose control. She showed him recordings from recent human military operations. Veltar watched soldiers who moved through combat zones with the same professional calm he might see in a scientist conducting experiments. They eliminated threats efficiently, protected innocent people carefully, and achieved their objectives without wasting lives or resources. This is terrifying, Veltar said without thinking. Dr. Yoon looked at him with interest. Why does it terrify you? Veltar struggled to put his feelings into words. Because you fight like machines. But machines that care. I do not understand how you can be so deadly and so compassionate at the same time. That is exactly why we are effective, Dr. Yoon replied. Our compassion makes us fight harder to protect what we love. Our discipline makes us fight smarter to achieve our goals with less suffering. Most species see these as opposite qualities, but for humans they work together. The next day, Veltar observed live-fire exercises in Luna Station's combat ranges. Major Shin Do-hyun, a Special Forces officer, demonstrated human tactical flexibility by running the same mission scenario 12 different ways. Each time the conditions changed. Different enemy positions, different weather, different available resources, and each time, the human soldiers adapted their approach. The key to human military success, Major Shin explained, is that we never fight the same battle twice. We study our enemies, learn their patterns, and then do something they do not expect. But how do you train for infinite possibilities? Veltar asked. We train our soldiers to think, not just to follow orders, Major Shin replied. Every human soldier learns strategy, tactics, and leadership. In battle, they can make decisions and adapt to new situations without waiting for commands from above. Veltar realized this was completely different from most military forces he had studied. In the coalition armies, soldiers followed strict orders from their commanders. They were not expected to think or adapt on their own. The idea of giving every soldier the ability to make tactical decisions seemed chaotic and dangerous. Yet when he watched the humans train, he saw no chaos. Instead, he saw a kind of organized creativity that let them respond to any situation with speed and precision. It was like watching a dance where every dancer knew the music so well, they could improvise their steps while still moving in harmony with the group. That night, Veltar sat in his quarters writing his preliminary report. But the words would not come easily. How could he explain to the coalition leadership that these humans were unlike any military force the galaxy had ever seen? They were not savage warriors driven by bloodlust. They were not cold-killing machines without emotion. They were something far more dangerous than either of those things. They were people who had learned to wage war while keeping their humanity intact. They could be incredibly deadly when necessary, but they never lost sight of why they were fighting or what they were trying to protect. For the first time since beginning his assignment, Veltar wondered if the coalition was making a mistake, not in considering humans as allies, but in thinking they could control or direct such a force once it was unleashed. These humans followed their own moral code, and Veltar was beginning to suspect that code might be stronger than any alliance or contract. As he looked out at Earth, spinning slowly below the station, Veltar realized he was no longer just studying human military capabilities. He was trying to understand something much more complex and frightening, the nature of a species that had turned warfare into an art form, while never forgetting that the ultimate goal of war should be peace. Veltar's fourth week at Luna Station began with a request that changed everything. Dr. Yoon Hana invited him to attend a series of lectures on human military philosophy at the station's War College. She warned him that the material might be disturbing to non-human minds. But Veltar insisted he needed to understand how humans thought about warfare at the deepest level. The first lecture was taught by Professor Kang Hoshik, an elderly human with gray hair and kind eyes that seemed too gentle for someone who taught about war. His topic was the evolution of human conflict theory. To understand how humans fight today, Professor Kang began, you must first understand what we learned from fighting ourselves for thousands of years. The holographic display showed a map of Earth with red dots marking major conflicts throughout human history. There were so many dots that the planet seemed to glow red. Veltar felt his stomach turn as he realized the scale of violence humans had inflicted on their own species. We estimate that in our recorded history, there have been fewer than 300 years when no war was happening somewhere on Earth. Professor Kang continued. This might seem like evidence that humans are naturally violent creatures, but the truth is more complex. He showed images of ancient battles where armies charged at each other with swords and spears, then modern conflicts where soldiers fought with precision weapons and careful tactics. The difference was striking. Early human warfare was emotional and wasteful, Professor Kang explained. We fought because of anger, fear, or greed. Millions died in battles that achieved nothing. But over time, we learned to fight smarter. We developed concepts like limited war, where the goal is to achieve specific objectives rather than total destruction. Veltar raised his hand. But surely fighting your own species taught you that war is terrible and should be avoided. Professor Kang's smile was sad. It taught us that war is terrible, yes. But it also taught us that sometimes terrible things are necessary to prevent even worse things. More importantly, it taught us how to fight efficiently when we must fight at all. The professor activated a new display showing human military doctrine. Veltar read concepts that made his blood run cold. Total war, strategic bombing, mutually assured destruction, asymmetric warfare. What you see here, Professor Kang said, are the tools humans developed for fighting other humans. We created these methods to use against enemies who understood war as well as we did, who could adapt and respond to our tactics with equal skill. This is madness, whispered a Centaurian officer sitting next to Veltar. They turned their own planet into a laboratory for perfecting murder. Professor Kang seemed to hear the comment. That is one way to look at it. Another way is that we turned our planet into a school for understanding the true cost of conflict. Every human leader today learns about the wars we fought against ourselves. They see the price of hatred, the futility of total victory, and the importance of knowing when to stop fighting. After the lecture, Veltar walked through the station's corridors, feeling dizzy. The information was too much to process easily. Humans had spent thousands of years learning how to destroy their own civilization, and somehow that experience had made them better at protecting others. The next day brought an even more disturbing lesson. Major Shin Do-hyun took Veltar to a secure area of the station, where human military planners worked on theoretical scenarios. The room was filled with holographic displays showing detailed battle simulations. What you see here, Major Shin explained, are war games where we practice fighting against different types of enemies. We study every known military force in the galaxy and develop tactics to defeat them. Veltar looked at the displays and felt his fear growing. The humans had detailed plans for fighting the Altarians, the Centaurians, the Vegan Empire, and dozens of other coalition species. They knew the strengths and weaknesses of every military force they might face. You have plans to fight your allies? Veltar asked, trying to keep his voice steady. We have plans to fight anyone we might need to fight, Major Shin replied calmly. This does not mean we want to fight them or expect to fight them. But if the situation ever arose, we would be prepared. How is this different from planning to betray your friends? Major Shin considered the question seriously. Because having the ability to fight someone and choosing to fight them are completely different things. We prepare for every possibility so that we can avoid the ones we do not want. He showed Veltar a simulation of human forces fighting against the Dominion Empire. The tactics displayed were nothing like what Veltar had seen the coalition use. Instead of trying to match the Dominion's brutal aggression, the humans planned to use speed, deception, and precise strikes to break enemy formations apart. The Dominion fights like a hammer, Major Shin explained. They smash everything in their path with overwhelming force. Most coalition tactics try to build a stronger wall to stop the hammer. Human tactics focus on making sure the hammer hits nothing but empty air. You would run away from them. We would make them chase us into traps. We would attack their supply lines, their communications, their weak points. We would force them to fight our kind of war instead of their kind of war. That evening, Veltar attended another lecture, This one by Dr. Lim So-young, a military psychologist. Her topic was the human approach to enemy psychology. One advantage humans have in warfare, Dr. Lim began, is that we understand how intelligent minds work under stress. We have studied fear, anger, pride, and desperation in ourselves, so we can recognize and exploit these emotions in our enemies. She showed video clips from recent conflicts where human commanders had successfully predicted enemy behavior and turned it against them. In one case, human forces had used an enemy's pride to lure them into an ambush. In another, they had used fear to make enemies abandon a strong position. We do not try to make our enemies feel these emotions, Dr. Lim explained. We simply recognize when they are already feeling them and adjust our tactics accordingly. A proud enemy can be baited into making mistakes. A fearful enemy can be pushed into panic. An angry enemy can be guided into wasting their strength. Veltar felt sick. You manipulate the minds of your opponents? We understand the minds of our opponents, Dr. Lim corrected. The manipulation comes from the situation, not from us. We simply recognize what is already happening and respond appropriately. After the lecture, Veltar returned to his quarters and tried to write his daily report. But his hands were shaking too much to use the datapad properly. What he had learned was too frightening to put into words. Humans did not just know how to fight. They had spent thousands of years studying war like other species studied science or art. They understood violence the way a master craftsman understands his tools. They could apply exactly the right amount of force in exactly the right way to achieve exactly the result they wanted. But what terrified Veltar most was not their skill at war. It was their restraint. Everything he had seen suggested that when humans fought against non-human species, they held back. They used only a fraction of their knowledge and capability because they were fighting enemies they considered inferior. They were not fighting at full strength because they were not fighting equals. Veltar realized that the galaxy had no idea what it was dealing with. The coalition leaders thought they were recruiting mercenaries, soldiers for hire who would follow orders and fight when told to fight. But humans were not mercenaries. They were something far more dangerous and far more valuable. They were a species that had mastered the art of war so completely that they could choose exactly how much of their power to use in any situation. And that choice, Veltar was beginning to understand, was the most terrifying thing of all. The next morning he requested access to human historical records about their greatest conflicts. He needed to see what humans looked like when they stopped holding back. The emergency alarms woke Veltar from a restless sleep. Red lights flashed in his quarters as the station's announcement system crackled to life. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, all personnel to battle stations. Veltar rushed to the command center where he found organized chaos. Human officers moved quickly between control stations, their voices calm but urgent as they coordinated responses to incoming data streams. Captain Li Jiwan stood at the central command station, her face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. What is happening? Veltar asked. The Dominion has attacked Kepler Station, Captain Li replied without looking away from her screens. 3 coalition fleets tried to stop them. All 3 fleets were destroyed. Veltar felt his heart skip a beat. Kepler Station was a major coalition outpost with over 2 million inhabitants. It was also only 6 hyperspace jumps from Earth. The Coalition High Command has authorized human military intervention, Captain Li continued. Admiral Kang Minjun is leading our response fleet. You will observe from the command ship. Within 2 hours, Veltar found himself aboard the human flagship Indomitable, watching as the human fleet prepared for its first battle against galactic enemies. The ship hummed with quiet efficiency as crew members performed their duties with the same calm professionalism he had observed in training. Admiral Kang Minjun was a tall, lean human with silver hair and steady hands. He studied the tactical situation with the patience of someone who had planned for this exact scenario many times before. Intelligence reports indicate the Dominion fleet consists of 47 heavy cruisers and over 300 smaller vessels, the Admiral's aide reported. They are using standard Dominion shock tactics, overwhelming firepower concentrated on a single target. And our force? Veltar asked. 12 ships, Admiral Kang replied, but we are not going to fight them the way the Coalition did. Veltar stared at the tactical display. 12 human ships against over 300 Dominion vessels. It seemed like suicide. The journey to Kepler Station took 3 days. During that time, Veltar watched the human crew prepare for battle with a calmness that unnerved him. They checked their weapons and equipment with methodical care, but they also played games, told stories, and shared meals together. It was as if they were preparing for a difficult job rather than a life-or-death battle. "Are your people not afraid?" Veltar asked Commander Huang Yeji, the ship's fighter squadron leader. "Of course we are afraid," she replied. "Fear keeps us sharp and reminds us to be careful. But we trust our training and our equipment. We know what we are supposed to do and we know how to do it well. But you are outnumbered by more than 20 to 1. Commander Huang smiled. "Numbers matter, but they are not everything. The Dominion fights like a mob. They rush forward and try to overwhelm their enemies with brute force. We fight like surgeons. We will cut them apart piece by piece." When they reached Kepler Station, Veltar saw the devastation the Dominion had left behind. The station was burning, its defensive platforms destroyed, its civilian population fleeing in escape pods. The Dominion fleet was spread out across the system, hunting down refugees and destroying anything that might be useful to coalition forces. "They are not just conquering," Veltar observed. "They are eliminating." "Yes," Admiral Kang said grimly. "This is how the Dominion fights. Total destruction of everything they cannot control. It is effective against species who value mercy more than victory." The Admiral activated the ship's communication system. "All units, execute Plan 7. Veltar watched in amazement as the human fleet split apart and disappeared into hyperspace. He had expected them to attack the Dominion fleet directly, but instead they seemed to be running away. "Where are they going?" he asked. "To work," Admiral Kang replied. For the next 6 hours, reports flooded into the command center from across the Kepler system. The human ships had not run away. They had spread out to attack the Dominion fleet from 12 different directions at once. The Dominion ships were powerful and well-armed, but they were designed for direct combat against enemies who fought the same way they did. The human ships moved like ghosts, appearing from hyperspace just long enough to destroy a target, then vanishing before the Dominion could respond. "Vampire. Squadron has destroyed 3 supply ships in Sector EU. 4, came one report. "Phoenix Squadron has disabled the Dominion command. Ship's communications array," came another. "Wraith Squadron has eliminated the enemy sensor network in Sector 7. Veltar realized that the humans were not trying to defeat the Dominion fleet in direct combat. They were dismantling it piece by piece like mechanics taking apart a complex machine. Every attack was precisely targeted to remove a specific capability from the enemy force. "You are not fighting them," Veltar said. "You are performing surgery on them." "Exactly," Admiral Kang nodded. "The Dominion expects their enemies to meet them head-on, to try to match their firepower with superior firepower. Instead, we are making it impossible for them to use their advantages." After 8 hours of this systematic destruction, the Dominion fleet began to fall apart. Without their communications, they could not coordinate their attacks. Without their supply ships, they could not maintain their weapons and engines. Without their sensor network, they could not find the human ships that kept striking at them. The end came suddenly. The remaining Dominion ships attempted to retreat, but the humans had positioned themselves to block all escape routes. Commander Huang's fighter squadron swept through the fleeing enemy vessels like wolves hunting scattered sheep. "Dominion fleet neutralized," came the final report. "Kepler Station is secure." Veltar stared at the tactical display in shock. In less than 12 hours, 12 human ships had completely destroyed a Dominion fleet that had crushed 3 coalition fleets. They had done it without losing a single vessel of their own. But what disturbed Veltar most was how the humans reacted to their victory. There was no celebration, no cheering, no expression of triumph. The crew simply began the next phase of their mission, rescuing survivors and providing medical aid to the wounded. "Why are you not celebrating?" Veltar asked Commander Huang as her fighters returned to the ship. "Because this was not a celebration," she replied. "This was work that needed to be done. We did it as well as we could, but there is nothing joyful about destroying other intelligent beings, even when they leave us no choice." "But you won a great victory." "We prevented a great tragedy," Commander Huang corrected. "That is different." Over the next 2 days, Veltar watched the human fleet coordinate rescue operations throughout the Kepler system. The same hands that had operated weapons with deadly precision now operated medical equipment with equal skill. The same minds that had planned the destruction of the Dominion fleet now planned the distribution of food and shelter to refugees. Captain Lee found him standing in the observation deck, staring out at the rescue ships moving between the damaged stations. "You look troubled," she said. "I am trying to understand something," Veltar replied. "Your people just won the most decisive military victory in Coalition history. You destroyed an enemy force that seemed unstoppable, but you act as if nothing important happened." Captain Lee was quiet for a long moment. "Can I tell you something about human military philosophy? We believe that the true test of a warrior is not how effectively they can destroy their enemies, but how quickly they can stop being warriors when the fighting is over. I do not understand. Any species can learn to kill efficiently, but it takes wisdom to know when to stop killing and start healing. The Dominion kills because they enjoy power over others. We kill because sometimes it is the only way to protect the innocent. The difference between those motivations determines what kind of people we become." That night, Veltar sat in his quarters trying to write his report about the battle. But every time he began to describe what he had witnessed, his hands started shaking again. He had not just seen humans win a battle. He had seen them demonstrate that they could fight a completely different kind of war than anyone else in the galaxy. They could be patient, precise, and utterly ruthless when necessary, then immediately transform back into healers and protectors. The Dominion was terrifying because they were savage and unpredictable, but humans were terrifying for the opposite reason. They were controlled, methodical, and completely predictable. If you understood that they would do whatever was necessary to protect what they valued, using exactly the right amount of force to achieve their goals. Veltar realized that his assignment was no longer about determining whether humans could help the Coalition fight the Dominion. His assignment was now about determining whether the galaxy was ready for the consequences of unleashing such a precisely controlled force. Because after what he had seen at Kepler Station, Veltar knew that humans did not just fight wars. They solved them. Veltar could not sleep. For 3 weeks after the battle at Kepler Station, he lay awake in his quarters staring at the ceiling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the tactical display showing 12 human ships systematically dismantling a force 50 times their size. He saw the calm faces of human officers as they coordinated the destruction of hundreds of enemy vessels. He saw Commander Huang's squadron cutting through fleeing Dominion ships with the precision of a surgical instrument. The worst part was how normal it had all seemed to the humans. They had performed the most devastating military operation in recent galactic history, then immediately switched to rescue operations as if changing from one routine job to another. There had been no emotional transition, no psychological adjustment period. They had simply stopped being killers and started being healers in the space of a few minutes. Dr. Lim. So-Young found him in the station's observation lounge 3 days after he had stopped attending briefings and training sessions. He was sitting alone at a table, staring out at Earth through the large windows. "You have not been eating," she said, sitting down across from him. "The medical staff is concerned." Veltar looked at her with tired eyes. "How do you do it?" "Do what? How do you live with yourselves? How do you sleep at night knowing what you are capable of?" Dr. Lim studied his face with the professional interest of someone trained to recognize psychological distress. "You are experiencing what we call moral injury. It happens when someone witnesses actions that challenge their fundamental beliefs about right and wrong. Your people destroyed an entire fleet in a few hours," Veltar said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thousands of intelligent beings died, and then you rescued their survivors and gave them medical care. How is that not insane?" "Because the alternative was allowing those beings to kill millions of innocent people," Dr. Lim replied gently. "We did not choose to fight them. They forced us to choose between their lives and the lives of their victims, but you made it look so easy. So casual." Dr. Lim leaned forward. "That is exactly why it was not casual. Do you think it would be better if we enjoyed killing? If we celebrated death? The fact that we treat warfare as a terrible necessity rather than a glorious adventure is what allows us to stop when the killing is done." Veltar shook his head. "You do not understand. Your species terrifies me more than the Dominion ever could. The Dominion kills because they are savage. You kill because you choose to. With full knowledge of what you are doing, that is far more frightening. Why? Because it means you could choose to kill anyone anytime, for any reason you consider sufficient. There is no anger or hatred to burn out, no bloodlust to satisfy. You could destroy my entire species and then sit down to dinner as if nothing had happened. Dr. Lim was quiet for a long moment. You are right, she said finally. We could do that. The question is, why do you think we would want to? That is what terrifies me. I cannot predict what you would consider a good enough reason. Over the following days, other humans tried to help Veltar understand their perspective. Captain Baek Hyun-woo, a Marine officer, found him in the station's library reading human military history. Finding anything interesting? Captain Baek asked. Veltar gestured at the holographic displays around him showing images from human conflicts throughout history. I am trying to understand how your species survived your own nature. Every other intelligent species in the galaxy fought wars until they learned better. You fought wars until you became perfect at it. We learned better too, Captain Beck said. We learned that being good at war is the best way to avoid having wars. How can that be true? Because when everyone knows you can win quickly and decisively, most conflicts get resolved through negotiation instead of fighting. Our reputation prevents more wars than our weapons win. Veltar looked at an image of a human city destroyed by nuclear weapons. But you use these terrible weapons on yourselves. How did you not destroy your own civilization? Captain Beck's expression grew serious. We came very close. There were moments in our history when a single wrong decision could have ended everything. But we learned from those moments. We developed systems, agreements, and ways of thinking that helped us step back from the edge. And now you want to use those same skills to help other species? We want to use those skills to protect other species from threats they cannot handle themselves. The Dominion fights like humans used to fight thousands of years ago. With emotion, hatred, and the desire for total victory, we fight like humans learned to fight after we nearly destroyed ourselves. With precision, restraint, and specific goals. That night, Veltar requested a meeting with Admiral Kang Minjun, who had returned to Luna Station after the Kepler operation. He found the Admiral in his office reviewing reports from across the galaxy about Dominion movements. You wanted to see me? Admiral Kang asked, gesturing for Veltar to sit down. I need to understand something, Veltar said. Why did your leaders agree to help the coalition? What do humans gain from fighting our war? Admiral Kang set down his datapad. That is a good question. The honest answer is that we gain experience fighting a new type of enemy, access to galactic trade networks, and the opportunity to establish diplomatic relationships with dozens of species. But those are not the real reasons. What are the real reasons? We help because we can help and because no one else can. The coalition military forces are not equipped to fight the Dominion effectively. They are too civilized, too bound by rules that assume their enemies share their values. The Dominion respects only strength, and the coalition does not know how to project strength without becoming the very thing they are fighting against. So you will become the monsters so others do not have to? Admiral Kang shook his head. We will do the necessary work so others can remain innocent. There is a difference, is there? From where I sit, you look like the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Perhaps we are, Admiral Kang agreed. But we are dangerous in service of values that make life worth living. We fight to protect freedom, justice, and the right of peaceful species to exist without fear. If that makes us monsters, then we accept that burden. Veltar felt something break inside his mind. The certainty that had guided his entire life, the belief that civilized beings could resolve conflicts through reason and compromise, was crumbling. The humans had shown him a universe where sometimes violence was not just necessary, but merciful, where the capacity for destruction could be a tool for preservation. I cannot write my report, he admitted. I do not know what to tell the coalition leadership. Tell them the truth, Admiral Kang suggested. Tell them that humans are exactly as dangerous as they need to be to protect what they value. No more, no less, Inkur. And if they decide that humans are too dangerous to trust, then they will try to contain us and they will fail. Not because we want to conquer them, but because they do not understand the difference between strength that seeks to dominate and strength that seeks to protect. The next morning, Veltar received a message from the Coalition High Command. His preliminary reports had caused concern among the leadership. Some council members were arguing that humans should be isolated rather than recruited, contained rather than allied with. Ambassador Song Nari requested a meeting with him that afternoon. She was an older human woman with gray hair and kind eyes that reminded Veltar of his grandmother. But after everything he had learned, those kind eyes seemed almost sinister in their calmness. "I understand you are having difficulty completing your assignment," Ambassador Song said as they walked through the station's gardens. "Your people are not what I expected," Veltar replied. "What did you expect? Warriors, mercenaries, simple fighters who could be hired to do jobs that civilized species find distasteful. Instead, I found something much more complex and much more frightening." Ambassador Song stopped beside a fountain where earth flowers grew in careful arrangements. "Can I share something with you? Humans have always been afraid of themselves. Our greatest fear is not death or conquest. Our greatest fear is becoming the kind of species that uses its power to hurt others for pleasure. Yet you have more power to hurt others than any species I have ever encountered." "Exactly. Which is why we spend so much time and effort making sure we use that power correctly. Every human child learns about the wars we fought against ourselves. They learn about the mistakes we made, the innocent people who died because of our anger and pride. We remember those lessons so we do not repeat them." Veltar looked at the peaceful garden around them. "And you think that makes you safe to trust? I think it makes us the only species in the galaxy that truly understands the cost of violence. We do not fight because we want to. We fight because we know what happens when good people refuse to fight evil ones." That evening, Veltar sat in his quarters with a blank report form in front of him. His hand still shook when he tried to write, but now it was not just from fear. It was from the terrible understanding that the humans were right. The galaxy needed protectors who could match the Dominion's capacity for violence while retaining the moral clarity to know when to stop. The coalition species were too peaceful to develop such capability themselves.